Hello, and welcome to episode number 3 of European UFOs. I'm your host, Sebastian, and if you like this episode, then please make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps. Rural Norway conjures up images of idyllic lakes framed by snow-capped mountains with the occasional elk and reindeer roaming through deep and unexplored forests. Yet in the early 1980s, this scene was disrupted by a set of rather curious and uncanny phenomena. In the small and remote valley of Hessdalen, around 120 kilometers southeast of Trondheim, the local population started reporting strange lights, often close to their homes. Lacking any apparent or known natural cause, these lights continue to puzzle researchers up to this day, even though their frequency has decreased since the early 1980s. Here with me to discuss this mystery is Erling Strand. He is one of the founders of Project Hessdalen, which for more than 40 years has been dedicated to the study and scientific exploration of the Hessdalen Lights. Hello, Erling. It's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Yes, well, I've been following your work and the Hessdalen phenomenon, Hessdalen Lights, for quite a long time, and it's really one of those UFO cases that continues to intrigue me, and I'm probably not the only one for whom that is the case. So, really looking forward to today's episode. However, before we get started, Erling, could you perhaps give us a bit of an overview of your background and how you got involved with Hessdalen?
Well, my first sighting, I was so lucky that I got a sighting during my student time in Trondheim. I went to Trondheim Technical School, and when I was a student up there, I got my first sighting when I was walking home from my university, middle of the day. And that triggered my interest for the topic. That was a long time ago, back in 1978. However, that brought me into the subject. And when this lights phenomena in Hessdalen started to show up quite many sightings, in the late 1981, I got involved with this. My background, is electrical study at the university. I worked some years in the private companies, and also started to lecture at the University College in Norway. And after, that was 1988, I started with the lecturing at the University College in computer topics, and have been doing that since then, and I will retire now. What else brought me into the topic? Well, first of all, my sightings when I was a student. I had also a couple of more sightings in the daytime, which captured my interest. And when the newspapers started to write about what was happening in Hessdalen, that was, I think, late 1981 or early 1982. At that time, I was working as a scientist in, actually a research fellow in a big company in Oslo. And this brought my interest, of course, because I've always been interested in the topic since my first sighting. And when I and some friends decided to go to Hessdalen one weekend, and I was lucky enough to have a sighting up there as well, which also increased my interest for the topic. And when I discovered that people in general, or especially scientists at that time, back in early 80s, didn't want to be involved in such topics at all, even if I think the subject, if you go into the subject of studying this strange phenomena or UFO phenomena or whatever you call it, I'm quite sure it will bring a lot of knowledge. So that triggered me to do some research or start a research together with some friends, and I think I learned a lot during the year. So that was my first intro to the subject.
Yes, no, very, very interesting. Can I ask you, what was that? So when you were a student, what was the original sighting that set all of this in motion? What was that like? Was it a classic flying saucer? Was it a triangle? Just a light? What did it look like?
Well, it was a flying saucer, in fact.
Wow.
It happened in the middle of the day. It was sunshine, nice weather. I was walking home from the university to where I was living. And when I was walking there alone, I saw a flying disc with 3 legs beneath it, half ball legs, and the shape as quite common, which I've seen later. At that time, I hadn't heard, or I wasn't nearly aware of UFOs. But when this flew over my head in the middle of the day, it didn't make any noise. It was white. It seems to be some kind of object, solid object, and it flew and over my head and disappeared behind some trees. And I, of course, wondered what was that? And not so far after that happening, there was an official meeting of a local UFO group in Trondheim, which should present themselves and what I was doing. And of course, I went to that presentation to listen to what they were saying. And I become part of that group. And then after that, I more and more got involved in the topic. And we have meeting and investigation and a lot of different things.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot. So I mean, yeah, as someone who's also had a UFO experience in the past, can just imagine the impact it had on you, because I know the feeling all too well when you see something in the sky which your rational mind can't make any sense of, and if you're scientifically curious as you are, it just really nags at you all the time. What was this? What I saw? So I completely get how this set everything in motion for you. Great. So we're in the early 80s. You had this personal sighting. You got involved with a local UFO group. And then the newspapers start reporting on Hessdalen. Now, before we delve into what was actually happening there, could you give our listeners, because a lot of them are from the USA, actually could you set the scene what Hessdalen is like? If you were to have some holidays there, what would it be like?
Yes, Hessdalen is a small valley in the southern part of Norway, only 15 kilometers, about 10 miles long, and it's a nice valley. People go up there for the nature. You have mountains in the western part of the valley, and also on the eastern part of the valley. And there are several small lakes where you can go fishing, and you can also. It's also popular for hunters who want to hunt the birds and so on. So it's a quite a good, I would say, nice valley, and just to visit to have the experience of the nature. It's of course one possibility, and we have wondered why this small valley in the middle of Norway, in the southern part of Norway, not so far from Røros town, and not so very far from the Swedish border either. The valley is located about 120 kilometers south of Trondheim city. This small valley, though, where it's beautiful nature, then suddenly in that valley something started to happen in late 1981.
And I believe this is when the first reports came out of that rather remote valley and the newspapers picked up on it, right? What did the newspapers, the media report, and what caught your attention there?
The newspaper started to write about the sightings the people had, and it was so many of them. So in the beginning, people just living there. It's about, at that time, 200 people totally in that valley. They started to talk between itself, but when it happened so quite often, the newspapers started to write about it. And many people reading the newspaper, they went up to the valley to try to see it for themselves, which many did. I could also mention that, the word UFO, it was used in beginning of the 80s, and at that time, many people in general, and especially scientists, was a little bit skeptical about when they was using that word. So there was a lot of ridiculing of the people who have seen it, and especially the inhabitants of the valley. They were ridiculed in the press, and of course that upset them a lot. But of course, when many people who took the opportunity to go there, took the weekend maybe, and stood up in the mountains around the valley looking for the light, it was mostly light, absolutely. And when they saw it themselves, that made, I'm sure, quite big impression of these people, as it did with me.
Yeah, so you were one of those people who, in the early days of the phenomenon, when it was common, actually went to Hessdalen and then had yet another actual visual sighting of what was happening. Could you describe that, your first sighting in Hessdalen, that then got you more interested?
Yes, we were a group of friends. I think we were about 7 or 8 people who decided to go up there. From most of us lived in the main capital, Oslo. This is about 400 kilometers away from this valley. So we decided to take a weekend up there. After work on Friday, we went up and stayed in tents.
Sounds like a lovely trip. I would love to do that, yeah.
And just before it became dark, we went out to different locations. We decided to split the group in 3 different groups. Because then we had the opportunity to cross-correlate. So if one group see it in that direction, another group can see it in another direction, so we can point out to where it is. So we did that. 3 groups communicated with walkie-talkie, as was possible that time in the early 80s. And not long time after, we have went to the different locations up in the mountains, 3 different mountains. We saw something, or I saw something, and another group saw the same thing. And what surprised me, it was how strong intensity the light was. I hadn't any expectation before I went to the valley. I didn't even believe I would see something because, well, if you go there and see something strange, is how big is the possibility to see something? But anyway, it was much stronger than I would ever expected. And it just suddenly was on the location. We didn't notice where it was coming from. It was low in the valley. So from my position, I didn't see it all the time because it was just behind a small hill between me and the phenomena, as we call it, the UFO phenomena. Sometimes it went up, it moved up and down, and moved a little bit around in the district as well. It could stand still for several minutes on one location, and then it started to move again.
Wow. So it's something that no aircraft in a conventional sense could do, because these kind of erratic and, right angle movements, stop and go, that's, apart from a helicopter, probably nothing can really do that. So that's already fascinating. Yeah.
Yes. And actually the other group was looking down to it. So it was, they were above this phenomenon.
And so with what kind of feeling did this first sighting leave you? Because I believe after that, then you kind of really started the Hessdalen project. So what went through your mind when you saw this? Did you have any theories, initial ones, or were you just completely stunned and thought, well, I don't know what it is, but this needs to be studied?
Yes, it was like that. I'm curious and want to find out more about things I experienced. And my first thought was, what could that be? What was it? And of course, I have read about it in the newspaper as well. So I suddenly knew that those who have seen this is real phenomena. It is a little bit different when you see it yourself instead of just hearing about it. Now I saw it myself. When I went back to Oslo, the main capital where I was living, I was working as a research fellow at that time. I had to talk about my companions and the other researchers about this happening. And I was told that, you shouldn't involve in UFO because that's not serious. People don't want to believe such kind of things. So they warned me, in fact, to stay away from such kind of research. Well, that triggered me even more. I didn't do anything at the moment. That was early 1982, or, not early 1982. It was actually in September 1982. And everyone, newspaper, people expected that some research facility would do something, go up in the valley and do some measurement or whatever. But it turned out that no one did. So,
Do you think history would have played out differently if the national news would have covered the phenomena differently, rather than using the word UFO and kind of treating it in a derisive way? If they had actually, said like, look, there is something going on. Do you think your colleagues and also the universities would have been more willing to actually send researchers up there right away?
yes, that's possible, because the attitude or the frighten of the subject did stop many people from doing things. But you have also the other topic. When you do research, you have to have fundings to support your research. That also, of course, stop many from doing things, because you need to find fundings.
Yes. And so as someone with a scientific background myself, I'm then really intrigued about the year 1983 when you kind of went about setting up Project Hessdalen, because I know how, even for more mainstream subjects, how difficult it often is to get funding, recruit people, etc. So how did you go about doing this? And also, you're dealing with a phenomenon that's a phenomenon in the truest sense, because you just have no idea what it is. So how did you go about setting up Project Hessdalen?
Yeah, we decided to set up, I and some friends decided to set it up actually in June 1983. My first tour to Hessdalen was in September 1982 when I had these sightings. And me and some friends, we discussed this a lot. We had a meeting back in 1983 where we gathered and discussed this topic and decided, well, no one else do something. Why cannot we do something? So we decided to start a project. We hadn't any money. We didn't have any funding. But anyway, we used our free times to prepare a field investigation, which we decided to take place in January and February 1984, half a year after our meeting or decision. And during that period, we had a lot of contact with different research facilities, the military, asking for help. They did support us with both knowledge and instruments. So many of the instruments we had during our first fieldwork in 1984 was due to the fact that we managed to get a good contact with some people in different research facilities and also in the military, who, of course, those were also interested in this topic. They could help support us with the instruments, which we borrowed. We we managed to gather some people who was interested. I think at the most, or totally 40 people participate in the field work. no one did they get any money for it. So they have to cover all their expenses. We didn't have any money. Although what we have the will, and we was willing to take holidays we had and etc. And that
Well,
was enough to get some data.
well, amazing. Before we continue this chronological overview, there's actually one topic I wanted to talk with you about a bit more, and you already mentioned it now in your overview here, and that's the role of the military, because I think, if you're interested in UFO phenomenon, unfortunately, you will come across, many entanglements with the military, conspiracy theories, and so on. So I'm really interested to hear how this worked out. So did the military approach you? Did you approach the military? Are they still interested in the phenomenon in Norway? Because from an US perspective, a UK perspective, the military is very interested, obviously, but there's some good evidence to suggest that they want to keep it, behind lockers. So it's interesting to hear that the military got involved in a public and in a public project like this.
Yes, yeah, I will say it was me who had the responsibility for the scientific and technical part of this first fieldwork. So it was natural that I should have contact with the different research facilities and the military. We wrote a lot of letters sent to different asking for help, both universities and the military. So I made the first contact in that way. And we some of them responses very positive. They said they would help us. I think that we had a plan. We told them what we wanted to do. We wanted to have some instruments out in the field. People are reading instruments. So maybe they got the impression that this is something we should support, not necessarily with money, but with help, work time. So we had several meetings, though, both with military and also the other fellows from research facilities. They told me privately why they was interested in it, because they were aware of this phenomenon, and they wanted to find out more themselves. And now some volunteers, as we were, wanted to do something. I think it's quite natural for them to help us with the project, which they did.
Yeah. So, so you mentioned, there's some evidence to suggest that the military was already aware of this phenomenon, which, to my mind makes sense, because as we will see later, it's a phenomenon that did also show up on radar. So I suppose the military was to some degree aware of it. And so I think what you then did with your team probably gave them, how can we say, a good cover, in, so to speak, to actually learn more about the phenomenon without actually sending own personnel to Hessdalen to do the feet on the ground work. I don't know if that theory makes sense, but for me, it's quite fascinating to hear that the military took an active interest and supportive role in all of this, because traditionally, at least in the US and the UK, that's not really the case. So it's very interesting for international listeners.
Yes, the military was interested, and of course we didn't tell everyone about that. We had some private meetings, let me call it that, with both the military and the other research fellow. We didn't hide it directly, but it's not common at that time to tell it to everyone about such kind of things. And of course, that probably made it more easy for them to get involved. In one point on time, I remember that they stated that they didn't want that we should go to the press or tell about their involvement. They want to be a little bit in the background, but they should help us, which we was very glad of. And well, we didn't go to the press telling about that in the beginning. I can tell it now because it turned out later, some couple of years later, that they did it. They told it official in a way. So it's not a secret.
Did you ever have to sign a non-disclosure agreement with the military? Are they still taking an interest in it, or was this only during the initial phase in the early 1980s that they were involved?
Early 1980s, no, I didn't sign any such. I think we all understood at that time, and I really understood it as well, that we shouldn't go to the press about this. That was not necessary at that time. And we had a very good relationship with these people who also was interested in the topic. So we had a good cooperation. They helped us both with the instruments and also some equipment. They even, on a couple of occasions, they sent us some people. For instance, when we had the field work, we wanted to set up station, or we split in. We had decided to have several smaller stations with some equipment around in the valley, and they helped us bring up the equipment to this station. So that was good. We had a good relationship. They were interested, and we had two fieldworks back one in 1984 and also one in 1985 in the winter time, that time as well. They helped us both in both fieldworks. But in 1985, the year after, the amount of sightings, the amount of data we gathered was very little compared with the one in the first year. So we all believed it it had gone and didn't continue. And that was very pity, because the military and they said that we would probably get full fundings for doing a big new field work the year after, if we managed to get as much data as we did in the first year, 1984. But sadly, we got only one good sightings in 1985 compared with more than 50 in 1984. And we believed it had gone, and there was no idea to plan any new fieldwork after that.
How convenient for the military. They saved a lot of money, but very unfortunate for you. Yeah. Great. So 1984 then was the year where you saw most of the sightings. Now, before we go into what these sightings looked like, if we can categorize them, how did you go about setting up a research methodology? Did you have different experts there from different scientific fields? And what was your methodology like? Because I think studying a phenomenon that you don't even know or have no idea what it could be is quite difficult, right? So how did you go about doing this?
Well, if you go back to 84 and 85, when we had this discussion with different scientists from different institutions and the military, they were expert. We had meeting with them, so the results we got was discussed with them, and they helped us with some of the analyzing and so on. But that was back at that time. Things have happened after that. Now we want to have, or we have also had some scientists from different countries who take an active role in doing some research in the field, and they have their expert, of course. The pity is that the big money has never yet come, and UFO is a difficult. It was difficult to get funding for our activities, so we haven't done any, real great research project with the activities, the research facilities which are needed to get results. Because, well, as I mentioned, we didn't get any funding. Well, actually, a little bit funding from the military, but not much at all. So the people who took part of it used their own money for taking part of it in the beginning. And if you want to study this really good, you have to do it in another way. I could say also that after 1985, when we all thought it had gone, and we didn't plan any new fieldwork due to that, it was by a coincidence maybe that the people up in Hessdalen wanted to know what had happened after our research activities up in the valley. I was invited to go to Hessdalen. That was 8 years after our last fieldwork, back in 1993 it was. And I had a presentation where I told the local people about the growing interest among scientists. I had been to several conferences, scientific conferences, presented what we had, and made some contact with different research, which they were interested. So I told them about that. It's slowly growing, the interest and growing the acceptance of that it is a real phenomenon. After my presentation in Hessdalen, one of the inhabitants came up to me after my presentation and said, "Well, it still continues," he said. Oh, I was surprised because I hadn't heard about it. And he said, "Well, we don't tell it anymore. We stopped telling it because there was so much ridiculing when we did that last time. So we decided to not tell it to anyone."
Yes, I think that's unfortunately still very much the situation today, although after 2017 it has changed somewhat. But I think still for a lot of people, be it in academia or the wider public, it's difficult to approach this phenomenon without being, made to appear ridiculous. So that's very unfortunate and something we still all have to deal with and fight with. Coming back to 1984, so the year when you got most of the sightings and most of the data, could you describe what the phenomenon actually looked like, what forms it took?
We have split the different sightings, the different happenings in 4 different groups. One group is flashing light. It can be down in the valley, of course, short flashes, fraction of a second, and it is normally white or blue. And we found out when you see one of these flashing, which can be hard to see because of the short time, you have to be very aware of. But anyway, when these flashing start to happen, it normally get more of these sightings. We first become aware of those many years after our fieldworks, because we started to see something on the cameras which we hadn't seen when we took the picture. Well, anyway, it turned out that that's one type, short flashing. The second one is balls of light with different shapes, different behavior, different speed, different duration. So much we have even discussed if we should split type 2 in several other groups, because it can last for minutes or even hours. It can stand still for a long period of time on one location, on one spot up in the mountain, and it can also have an enormous speed. On one occasion, we had the opportunity to measure a speed of 30,000 kilometers an hour.
Wow. Yeah.
And that second type, with different shapes and so on, mostly yellow, or even also some other colors. Can also be more colors involved, but mostly yellow. The third type is where you have several lights together, and when they're moving, they all move together as if they are connected to something. And when this type of phenomena has been seen, when it's not completely dark outside, the witness tell that it seems to be some kind of black object these lights are connected to. We have seen that so many times as well, so it even been pictures and video. So we have decided to put that in a separate type. So that's type 3.
Does with type 3, does the object have a particular form, like a triangle or a square, or is there any sort of geometric pattern? Or?
It seems that the form is different. Some describe it as an elliptical, oval shaped around shape like that with different lights onto it. It has also been longer, like a cigar, and it has also been Well, I think that's the two. Don't have so very many which have had the opportunity to see it when it's so dark, or so when it's light enough to describe the form. But we have no triangular at that time. Well, let me see. No, we have actually one triangular as well. So, well, we cannot, even if we have different shapes on these objects which connect the different lights, we haven't decided to split that in several types. That's one type. Well, I could mention also that the different types behave so differently. So sometimes it's very hard to believe it's the same thing. For instance, if you think of a short flashing light, yellow or white or blue, and if you compare that with the ball of light lasting for even up to hours, and you have this third one with the several lights connect on to some type which look like an object, it's hard to believe that this is due to the same phenomena. So that is also one of the reasons why we call it the Hessdalen phenomena and not the Hessdalen phenomenon, because it may be different things we observe. And if so, if it is different things or different solution on what it is, why does all of them happen in a small Norwegian valley? It brings us to believe there must be something.
Indeed, yes, it's very peculiar, and perhaps we can spend a few minutes talking about that in subsequently. But sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you with your overview of the different types, because I believe there's a fourth one as well, right? Fourth type.
Yes, the fourth one is not so common. It's more like what we can say, more standardized daylight UFO observation, which we have decided to take in a fourth type. Not necessarily always lights on it, but seems to be some kind of object which many people think of when they hear the word UFO. The picture which many people come up with can be similar like that. Been seen mostly in the daytime, not always lights on it. It can be lights on it as well, but not always. So that's the fourth type.
Mm-hmm. And with these four types, is there anything in their behavior to suggest that these cannot be natural phenomena? Because some listeners might think, okay, you have flashes of light, sounds like a pretty natural phenomenon to me. Is there anything to suggest in kind of the way these different types behave that this is something totally anomalous? Is there some sort of interaction between observers and these phenomena?
Yes, that's we have. We can discuss the different types, how strange it is. Let me see, where should I start? I can mention also this flashing light is happening down in the valley. You're looking down to it, very often down to the river. It's not far up in the sky. That was also, of course, but I think the most interesting is when you can look down to it or you have the mountain in behind. It doesn't seem to, so far, it hasn't seems to have any electrical properties and so on. Some other strange thing is that when we have managed to take an optical spectrum, there has been what we call a continuous optical spectrum, which could indicate, well, for instance, a solid type of material can be, if you think of heat and such kind of thing, that could give a continuous spectrum. But when this thing is moving very fast without any sound at all, for instance, the light which we measured to 30,000 kilometers an hour by looking on the radar, which was also seen by the people outside looking at the light. Without any sound, you should expect, if it was any kind of solid thing, you should have expected some sound from it. That haven't been noticed or observed in these. And also we have stories where people can see it just coming out from nowhere, starting to glow, or even object has been seen like that, and can also just disappear out from nowhere. We have also measured or followed it on our radar screen when we haven't seen anything, where the radar say it is something. And that has been very often a strong radar reflection.
Well, there's something solid in the sky somewhere, but you can't see it. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yes, we have discussed this with a radar expert and explained that we didn't see anything, and the only thing that they could think of which could give such a big, strong radar echo was a local ionized field, plus and minus, much of plus and much of minus in a short period, a short area and or volume that could give such a big reflection. But if that's the case, how could this be made? How could this occur? So we have some things which I would say it's strange, and also especially if you think of type 4 observations where people see what it seems like an object, and that is also hard to explain as a natural phenomena, and the movement is also without any sound, etc.
And very, very interesting. I always suggest that it's very unlikely that something out of the natural world per se. Has there been any sort of how can I say this, like signs of intelligence or interaction? So what I'm trying to say is that is there something to suggest that there's some sort of intelligence involved in these phenomena?
I would say, well, first of all, it's a very difficult topic. What should you define as intelligent? Although we have had very few observations and happenings which could indicate that. And of course, I must say could indicate, because may also be other topic as well, because it's very difficult to go into that. But I can think of, well, I can mention only on one experience we did. We used a weak laser pointing at the flashing light coming during the fieldwork, not a strong laser. And when we pointed the laser beam towards this flashing, it changed the flashing frequency. And
Wow.
we didn't. We took the laser down again after some seconds, and the flashing went back to normal again. It seems to be some kind of interaction or some kind of reaction or whatever.
Yes.
Even if our laser was very weak, only 1 milliwatt. We did that test for 9 times, and 8 of those 9 times this thing happened. And if you bring in another happening maybe in connection with this one, that was a sighting very local to where the station was. People was just outside. It was 3 people. And there was a red light moving around their feet, so it was very, very close. And it looked like they were the same color as the laser we had used actually 1 week earlier. It was still during the fieldwork. And this red light moving for some seconds around the feet of the observers, and it looked like the same type of light we had used as our laser, red beam of light. So when we did checking with the observers of this light, and asked them if it was like this, I was pointing the laser towards the ground. It was snow, and you can imagine when it's snow and you point a red laser to it, it's on the ground, and the snow is illuminating red or reflecting red. And the witness to this happening, this red light around the feet, they said it was just like this, but it was just a little bit weaker. Well, that's an happening in combination with the laser test we did, that someone will say that's an answer or whatever to our test, pointing a laser to them. But of course, it's very, very difficult or very. You cannot say that. It doesn't prove intelligent.
Mm-hmm. No, but thanks for sharing this, anecdotal evidence. I think it's very important to, even if an alternative theory might make sense, it's important to record everything. And so thanks a lot for sharing this. Very, very interesting. I gathered you collected data with different technical instruments, radar, Geiger counters, magnetic measurements, etc. Are there any physical traces left by these phenomena? Did you do ground sample analyses? Is there any physical trace?
In Hessdalen, it's very little physical samples, or where you can say they have landed or something. We have found some, but we cannot say that these are due to the phenomena. It can be maybe some other happenings. So in Hessdalen we don't have. But we have another happenings in another part of Norway, also in the winter time, where people was seeing a similar light as in Hessdalen, yellow light type 2, coming into this mountainous area where they was located. And I was in a cottage. In fact, it was dark outside. It was snow. There was become aware of this light coming in the valley, and they saw this light go down to the snow. And when it went down to the snow, well, first of all, the snow illuminated very much because of the light. It reflected the light from the observation. But the light itself suddenly turned off or become much weaker when it touched the ground. And after some very few seconds, it slowly went up again. And when it did that, it slowly increased the intensity again. And it moved back in the same direction, not up, but it was following the valley. They could see the hillside in the background, so it was down in the valley. And when it was moving away, it slowly increased the intensity again. They went the day after they went to the location to see if there was any track, and it was. And some days later, we managed to take samples of the snow, both in the track and also reference samples, and found out that the amount of bacteria in the snow where the track was, it has been decreased. It was another type of bacteria. It seems that the bacteria had been killed. And the nearest reference was only, I think, if I remember, a little bit more than 1 meter away from the track. It was a normal amount of bacteria in the snow, and also like the other reference samples we took, it was quite normal. And it was another type of bacteria because it had when you measure the bacteria, you grow and so on. And the bacteria who was still alive in the tract itself was a different type, which the analyzer said is a type of bacteria which are more hard to kill.
Was there any sign of radiation in that area? Or
we didn't measure radioactive radiation at that time. We only took samples from the snow.
But a very fascinating case because it shows that there was some sort of interaction or at least impact from the UAP on its environment. I'm wondering because with many UFO cases in history, there have either been, good effects or bad effects on human individuals, observers, experiences, whatever you want to call them. Have any of these happened in Hessdalen? Because quite a few people have been there by now. Is there anything reported in terms of effects on humans? Or
I would say no, not what we are aware of. The humans up there, well, some of them in the beginning, very few was a little bit afraid, of course, because when this happening just outside your window, moving a big light in not so far away from your house, illuminating inside the house, it's a reason to be a little bit concerned, a little bit afraid.
To say the least, yeah.
But not so. This happened for many times. As I mentioned, at the most we had 20 observation a week at the most during early 80s. So the local people up there started to be aware. It wasn't any, even if it was strange, they wasn't afraid of it anymore, because there was. So I haven't heard of any damage or anything for the people up there. It's maybe I can say not dangerous.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. Yeah, because as I said, sometimes with UAPs, you do get effects on humans, and I believe also that's something Gary Nolan recently has been talking about quite a bit in the US. So very interesting and good to hear, because then I'm more inclined to actually visit Hessdalen soon. So
Yes.
that's good. Yeah, so we're still in the 1980s and moving forward a bit chronologically. So I believe in the 1990s, the phenomenon slowed down a bit. You already said that the main period was really kind of in the early 80s. But in the 90s, you installed the automatic measuring system. Could perhaps briefly talk a bit about this?
Yes, as I mentioned, I had a presentation now, become aware that it still continued back in 1993 when I had a presentation. I also decided to start the project again, and then I was working at the University College, and it was started from that place. I had been to several conferences, so I invited those scientists, maybe most of it physicists, to a conference in Hessdalen, which took place in 1994, where we discussed the phenomena. And I also decided to, instead of running fieldwork again, maybe we should set up an automatic station with cameras, record, computer system, detecting what's happening. I use a topic for my students at the University College to build such a cabin, blue box. In fact, it was installed in 1998 after they had been working on it on different groups, though, from 1994 to 1998. It was ready to be installed in Hessdalen, and it was running, as I mentioned, you have cameras and you have computer who analyze pictures from the camera, and if something light shows up, it record and send the alarm pictures to our server. That station has been in development. It has been giving data a long period of time. It hasn't, even if we had some instruments in there, we had some cameras and computers and so on, and we had gathered a lot of interesting pictures of the phenomena, mostly flashing lights though, but also other yellow type 2 lights, which has been gathered automatically from this station, which people can look at if they go to www.hessdalen.org. Hessdalen with 2 S, Hessdalen. And where the data is inside there. I would say that even if the station has been in operation, the equipment inside have never been real let me see, professional, really good cameras, really good computer equipment, and so on. But we have managed to get some data anyway. Now we are working with getting. We are making a new what we call Project Hessdalen. It's not connected to our university college anymore. It's a group of us again who want to make new instrument or bring new instruments into the station. There's a group now, more people who are expert, and the plan of building this new what we call blue box is in the progress just now. So I believe when we got real good instruments, real good cameras, and real good other instruments as well, which we know that the phenomena can get into, for instance, the radar, we have the magnetometer, etc. I'm very hopeful that we'll get maybe a breakthrough. I hope so. When we have this in operation.
Yes, and I think Project Hessdalen really occupies a unique position in that it's a civilian research effort into understanding the phenomenon, and I think the work you did is amazing because you thought creatively how to manage this project, how to set it up with limited amounts of funding. So I read that you involve your students, and you just said that you involve them and that you bring them there to help you and to study the phenomenon. And I think that's so great because it shows that we can actually manage to study the subjects that are currently frowned upon by thinking creatively. And I mean, just thinking back at my university days, I mean, how cool would that have been to go to a remote area to study UFOs? I mean, it must be, you must have a very popular course at university, I imagine.
Yes, the students love it.
Yes,
of course. And we also had some activity for younger students, which hadn't been a student at University College. We had also an activity for younger students, which we call Science Camp, where we bring these up to Hessdalen, where they stay together with their teachers, a class, and their teachers. We give them instruments and tents, and where they stay out in the mountainous area. It's a little bit tough. It's cold, but it's very popular because something really happening. They're studying. They're trying to get the correct data for their analyzing themselves, the young students, and all. So the engagements from these students is enormous. So we use that as a topic. Not only for mystery, but also teach them a little bit mathematics, a little bit physics, and a little bit nature and so on. And they have learned a lot. So if there is any teacher who have students, or young students, and they have a local place where they can go out, bring them out in the nature, looking for a mysterious thing. That's very good. You should do that.
Absolutely. And I think that's also where the future of this field lies, right? UAP studies, because with the older generation, there's still a lot of, biases and stigma attached to it, but bringing young people to it who don't know all the kind of historical baggage attached to the subject, I think is really the right way forward. And I think that's looks quite promising for the future. Now, look, Erling, you've been very generous with your time. I do have one, rather two final big questions. The best always for the end. So we already touched on it a bit. What is the? It's kind of weird, isn't it, that you have this small valley in the middle of nowhere that has been such a hot spot. Why is that? Would you be willing to share any theories or opinions on that? Because I suppose it's still an unresolved issue. So.
Yes, why does it happen in a small Norwegian valley? We have asked us that question a lot, of course, and we have thought of different things. One of the things that the geophysics, the mountains, is there something specific in that mountainous area? We have had scientists, the geophysicists, who have done investigation up there. And they found results which I think are interesting, unusual magnetical things among electrical properties, etc. They say it's a little bit unusual. They haven't measured like this other places. But from there to say that this is the reason why it happened, that's a big step. We don't know.
Yes. No, thanks. That makes sense. So it's probably up to future research to resolve this issue, but definitely an enigma. It's kind of, ever since I've been following your work, I've been asking myself this as well. Why a small remote valley in Norway? Yeah. And the final question I have is, it's great to see that you're still continuing work in Hessdalen and actually, have more things planned. So what is the next chapter in a few sentences?
Well, the next chapter is to make a plan for getting supporters for our new project. Because if we have enough people who can support us with not much money, a little bit money, which most people, I think, can afford. If enough people do that, well, then we get enough funding to get the activity, to get the instruments to bring out the data to people. Because our plan is to, these new instruments we are planning to bring into Hessdalen, good quality instruments that of course cost money, so we need some money. And also we are planning to let the data out to people. I've always done that because I think there are researchers maybe around which can study the data and maybe use that data as a new thing. So the new thing is that people can become members of Project Hessdalen. The website www.hessdalen.org will soon be changing, and it will be much more easy for people to give a little bit support. And for those who do that, they would get something extra, something data which are not common for everyone, etc. So we are in the process of making this.
Perfect. Yeah. What a great note to close on. And I'll make sure to include the link to your website in the description of this episode. Look, Erling, you've been very generous with your time. I can only say thanks a lot. And thanks so much for you making all your data available online. It's been a tremendous resource over the last years. And, really looking forward to seeing what's happening in the near future. So thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.